Hey everybody, Jeff Oriama here. I've been seeing a lot of discussion lately around whether AI or agentic development is the end of Agile. Personally, I think that's the wrong question. Before we can answer it, we have to be clear about what we mean by Agile. Because over the last 25 years, that word has accumulated a lot of baggage. The Agile Manifesto is actually really short. I can read it right now. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. Most of us, however, don't experience Agile directly, at least not how it's written out. We experience Scrum, we experience SAFe, or some sort of cargo cult version of those systems that usually includes things like sprint planning, story points, velocity, backlog grooming, and all the rituals that have grown up around those systems that we kind of collectively refer to as Agile. When I read the Agile Manifesto today, I actually think many of its ideas fit surprisingly well with agentic software development. One of its core values is responding to change over following a plan. If AI makes implementation dramatically faster, then, at least in theory, changing direction becomes cheaper. Another value emphasizes working software. If an engineer can iterate with an agent, or even a non-engineer can iterate with an agent dozens of times in an afternoon and quickly put something in front of a customer, that's arguably much closer to the spirit of Agile than spending days discussing implementation details before writing any code. The manifesto also talks about welcoming changing requirements, even late in development. Again, if implementation becomes less expensive, there's less incentive to defend decisions simply because too much effort has already been invested. So the sunken cost fallacy becomes minimized a bit. Where I do think AI begins to challenge long-held assumptions is in the process frameworks that many organizations adopted around Agile. Most of those frameworks were designed for a world in which implementation was the dominant cost. We estimated stories because engineering time was scarce. We carefully allocated work into sprints because changing direction carried a lot of overhead. We measured velocity because we wanted some way of predicting future delivery. Those ideas were all reasonable responses to the economics of software development at the time. Here's a diagram of a typical SDLC. In the center is this very expensive implementation step. For this step, it may be justifiable to spend quite a bit of time and effort on Scrum-like processes like sprints and estimates and quarterly planning, so you can be sure you're being selective about where to focus your engineers' development efforts. Agentic workflows change those economics. See this very scientific chart. Agents don't eliminate uncertainty, and they certainly don't eliminate engineering judgment, but they do, or at least they often do, compress the cost of implementation and, to an extent, testing. If an engineer can go from an idea to a working prototype in an hour, what exactly is a story point measuring? Who is that valuable to anymore? If requirements can be explored interactively with an agent before a ticket is even created, what role should sprint planning play? If the most expensive part of software development shifts away from typing code and toward architecture, product thinking, governance, review, then it seems reasonable to ask whether our planning processes should shift as well. So I don't think this means Scrum is dead or SAFe is obsolete. Large organizations still have coordination problems, dependencies, budgeting cycles, compliance, obligations, and a lot of other realities that process frameworks attempt to address, right? But I do think we're entering a period where we should be willing to question assumptions that have gone largely unchallenged for more than 2 decades. Some of those assumptions were never fundamental to Agile in the first place. They were practical responses to the constraints of software development at the time and kind of got wrapped up to that whole hype cycle. So did AI kill Agile? Will AI kill Agile? I don't think so. If anything, reading the Agile Manifesto today makes me appreciate how much of it was focused on adaptability rather than ceremony. So the harder question is whether the processes we built around Agile still reflect the economics of modern software development. As implementation becomes cheaper, and iteration becomes faster, I suspect we'll spend less time optimizing the flow of work and more time optimizing the quality of the decisions we make, or even managing the volume of the decisions that we make. That feels like a conversation worth having. What do you think? Is AI changing the conversation with your team about what kinds of processes that you choose and adopt? Let me know in a comment. That's it for now. See you next time.